What's up everyone, this is Drea here with another video, and right now it's a very exciting time for those of us interested in cell phones and maybe shopping around for a new phone. We've had the first major flagship release of 2018 with the Galaxy S9 and S9 Plus. And I actually will most likely be getting my S9 Plus tomorrow, so you guys can look for an unboxing video and full review of that coming up soon. And then, of course, we're going to be seeing more flagships coming out within the next coming months. Things like the LG G7, the HTC U12, and so on. But what I wanted to do with this video is actually revisit 2017 and look at one of the phones that I think was pretty much an underdog. And that would be this device right here, the LG V30. And I think even with the 2018 flagships coming out, there's still a great market for this phone. And I wouldn't be surprised if prices started going down for all the 2017 flagships now that the new crop of phones is coming out. So let's go ahead and see what this V30 is like a few months down the line. Okay, so as I mentioned, the LG V30 I think is one of the most underrated phones that came out last year. I think it's a great device that really checks out a lot of the boxes for what people were looking for in flagships last year, but yet it didn't generate as much buzz as, say, the Galaxy Note 8 did. But really I think it's a great device. Starting as usual with the overall design and quality of the phone, I do really like this. It is your typical glass back phone that was popular last year. I really like the display. It's got the 6-inch 18:9 aspect ratio display with those very minimal bezels all around. So just from an aesthetics point of view, I think this is a great looking device here. I do know I did see some reviews where people were complaining about the weight of the phone, saying it was too light and didn't necessarily feel like quality material. I would have to disagree with that. It is a little bit lighter than some other phones, but I actually think that's a good thing because it's not really bulky or wearing you down. And to me, it feels like a quality product. So that's my personal opinion on it. I really like how it feels, this phone, and it is design-wise one of my favorite phones that came out last year. Moving on to the display, it does have, again, that 18:9 aspect ratio, and we do have a POLED display, QHD. It's not as vibrant as something like, say, the Galaxy series, the Samsung phones that probably have the best displays on the market, but this still gets the job done. It's a good display. I haven't really noticed any of that color shifting that people have complained so much about with this phone and with the Pixel 2 XL. But for me, the display is perfectly fine on this phone, and I've really enjoyed using it. And yeah, again, I just love the size of it. I love the minimal bezels. The phone itself is roughly the same size as my HTC U11, and yet it's just got a lot thinner bezels and a lot larger display. So feels good, no complaints there. Moving on now to software, this phone is running LG's UX6, which is a pretty heavily skinned version of Android. So for anybody who prefers the stock experience, it may be a little bit harder to get used to this one. I myself am not a huge fan of LG's custom UI. I prefer stock personally, and I've actually been using this phone running Nova Launcher instead because I just don't really care for the look and feel of this UI. But I did take off the Nova so for the purpose of this review so you guys can see what it's like. That being said, there are a lot of good features baked into the software on this phone. Of course, there are customization options. As we've seen with other devices, you do have the ability to change the theme. If you go into the settings and the display area, you can come here and download different themes, which is always a little bit nice to make your phone look a little bit different than anybody else's. My favorite thing though is the ability to change the navigation buttons at the bottom. And I think that anybody who chooses software buttons should have this feature available. To me, it's the biggest benefit of having software buttons versus capacitive buttons. So if you come here to Home Touch Buttons and then click on Button Combination, you can see you can add different things. Right now I have added the drop notification button over here, which is really easy, especially for someone like me with really small thumbs. It's harder to slide down the notification tray, so I like having this. My favorite way to bring down notifications is to swipe down the fingerprint sensor, but this phone does not have that feature available, so hopefully that's something LG would add in the future. But beyond having the fingerprint swipe down, I do like that they include this extra button here, so you can drop those notification shade if you so choose. If not, you can remove it and keep the standard 3 buttons. You can also add a screen capture and the Q slide, which is just another way to bring up apps. Pretty much the only one I use is the drop notification button on here. So I really enjoy that aspect of it as well. And you'll notice on the V30 that LG dropped its iconic second screen found on the V series, the V10 and the V20. And instead what they did is bring on this floating app tray here. So that's by pressing this arrow. There we go. By bringing that over, you know, there's another way to access. And that's kind of its compromise, I guess, of getting rid of the secondary display. For me, the V series, I don't think it ever benefited from the secondary display at the top, and I think this floating display is even more unnecessary. I don't necessarily see why I would need it, and it's not something I use. I found that, you know, having my most used apps on my home screen is fast enough, and for anything else I can just go into the app tray and get to it. So again, the floating display is not something I personally use, but it is there, especially maybe for those who do miss the secondary display. It is also worth mentioning that the V30 does come with Face ID. Of course, it does still have the standard Touch ID, but Face ID seems to be becoming more and more popular these days. So you do have that option available for you if you so choose to unlock your phone that way. For me, I always prefer Touch ID because I think it's more secure. And on this phone, the Touch ID works basically the way you'd expect it to. It is pretty fast and doesn't have a lot of hiccups or errors reading my fingerprint. But yeah, you'd expect that of a flagship phone of this caliber. The Face ID works pretty well also. I don't use it as much as the Touch ID, but I have tested it out a bit on this phone, and it does work well. It's not, I actually find the cheaper OnePlus 5T to be more accurate in reading my face and unlocking the phone. So while it is nice that it has it, I don't think it's the best facial recognition out there. But again, it's another option that's available for you. So with most smartphones today, the biggest feature is usually the camera, and the V30 is no exception. This does come with the dual camera setup. We've got a 16 megapixel main camera with an f1.6 aperture, and then it also combines it with a 13 megapixel wide angle camera. And the camera does come with a lot of customization features, a lot of different modes here, probably more so than you would get on most other camera phones. So of course it's got your standard point and shoot auto mode. It also has a manual mode for those who are more inclined to photography, and a few others that I don't really use that much. Some of them are kind of gimmicky, to be honest. I usually generally just stick to pure auto mode. Of course, the V in the V series does stand for video, so you do have great video options for this device available. You can see where it says at the bottom here, point zoom, And that's where, when you're taking video, you can zoom in on a particular subject, and it'll just zoom right in there really smooth for you. You can also come up top, and you do have different filter settings here, make it look a lot more cinematic. So for anybody who's really into photography and more so taking videos, I do recommend this phone probably more so than others, just because of all the different modes and options available for you. The camera quality is pretty good as well. I wouldn't say it was the best camera phone to come out last year, but it does rank up there. The quality is pretty decent. And I did take some sample photos, of course, for you. I always like to show off some sample photos. So you guys can take a look at the overall quality for yourself. And of course, let me know what you think in the comments about how it stacks up with other flagships that came out within the year. So those are just some camera samples that I have for you. Again, you can let me know what you think about them in the comments. One of my favorite things about the camera is that wide angle lens. And I think that if you're going to go with the dual camera setup, that having a wide angle lens makes the most sense, just so you can really take those nice scenic photos. So I like that they have that available as well. Moving on now to the audio quality. I kind of got a mixed bag with the audio on this phone. The external speakers, I think, was the biggest disappointment. One, they only have the one bottom firing speaker on top. I think it would have been better if they go with the dual audio setup. Again, maybe that's one of the improvements they'll make this year, hopefully. But the one bottom firing speaker, it's not as full and rich of a sound as other phones. Actually, it's my biggest disappointment. I actually think my cheaper Xperia XA2 has better audio coming out of its bottom firing speaker than the V30. It just sounds a bit thin to me, the sound. That being said, plug in some headphones, and you've got your standard 3.5mm headphone jack here, which everybody loves. Plug in your headphones and you get a completely different scenario. This phone does come with a quad DAC built in, and the audio coming out of the headphones is just phenomenal. I think it is probably the best that I've heard so far. Even comparing it to my HTC U11, which was probably my favorite phone of last year. And the U11 has great audio with its Usonic headphones, but I would still give the edge to the V30. That quad DAC just sounds amazing. So yeah, not thrilled with the external speakers, but the quad DAC here makes up for it. I'm generally the type of person that when I'm using my cell phone, I use headphones more so than using the external speakers. So I'm really thrilled about the audio quality that comes out of that headphone jack. And the fact that they include the headphone jack and haven't been one of the people to get rid of it, one of the manufacturers to get rid of it. So hopefully that'll continue this year and they will also retain it. But I guess we'll see as how that goes. Last thing I'm going to talk about is the battery performance here, and this phone does come with a 3300 milliamp hour battery, and it runs the way you would expect it to. It does last me all day with a charge, so you don't really have to worry about walking around with your charging cable at all. You can easily get through a full day. It is pretty much average use. I can get about 5 hours screen on time generally with it. Nothing mind-blowing, but it's no slouch either. So I am pleased with the battery performance overall. This phone does come with wireless charging as well. Again, another feature that's becoming more and more popular that it is nice to see on here, especially considering it is a glass back phone. So if you're going to make a glass back phone, you might as well include wireless charging on there. So yeah, that's pretty much the LG V30 overall. So just to recap for you, you know, a couple of the things that I didn't like on the phone, which I actually failed to mention when I was just talking about the camera. The biggest disappointment is probably the front-facing camera, which is only 5 megapixels. And for a phone that's really hyping up its media capabilities and its camera capabilities, the fact that they went with a 5 megapixel selfie camera is just kind of questionable to me. I also don't like, again, LG's software, LG's UI, I should say. Not my favorite version of Android. And the other thing is they have not been quick to update this phone. As of right now, and this being March 15th, 2018, I have yet to receive the Oreo update, so it's still running on 7.1.2 Nougat. So I would hopefully like to see that Oreo update coming soon. So those are just a couple of things that I didn't really care for on this phone. Everything else, I think, really, again, stacks up to 2017 flagships. And again, it checks all the boxes for what most people were looking for, meaning it's got a great camera, it's got wireless charging, it's got the 18:9 aspect ratio, it's got the very thin bezels, it is IP68 water and dust resistance, and you've got amazing audio coming out of that quad DAC. So it checks most of the boxes, and the price still undercuts its biggest competitors, such as the Note 8 and the iPhone 10. So I would definitely rank the V30 as one of the more underrated phones of 2017. I think it's a great device. I think it's still relevant this year. I think maybe some minor improvements LG needs to do with it for the 2018 version. But yeah, great device. And I want to hear your guys' thoughts on it as well. So let me know what you think in the comments if you have this phone, or if you don't have this phone, what reasons did you have for passing it up? I would just overall love to hear your thoughts on the LG V30. And I will definitely see you guys in the next video. Look out for that Galaxy S9 Plus unboxing coming up. Take care.